Good morning, everyone, and welcome to 3Fox Presents the Built Environment Growth Companies Secrets of Their Success webinar, brought to you by Rapport3, the project management, that's easy for me to say, a management system by Cubic Interactive. My name is Toby Fox. I'm the Managing Director of 3Fox, the marketing agency for councils. And our job is to keep our network of councils and contractors and developers and investors and their influencers and advisors connected. And one way that we continue to do that is through our online channels. These are platforms for councils and their partners to discuss their ambitions and challenges and influences and issues of urgency. And to that end, we're going to be back on June the 30th with the London Construction Programme to discuss improving mental health in the construction industry. And that's an absolutely critical issue now, and a conversation you can't afford to miss if you're working in the built environment. We're also kicking off our interviews with new leaders and cabinet members that are emerging from this month's local elections. And I'm delighted that Councillor Shantanu Rajawat, the new leader of Hounslow Council, will be our first guest on the 14th of June. And you can register for both of those sessions in the chat. Back to today, though, and we're going to be looking back a short way to help us see forwards. The pandemic was a catastrophe for many businesses, but some in the built environment avoided the worst. Once government excluded construction sites from lockdown, confidence flowed back through the industry, and for some, the last year has been the most productive ever. However, even for these success stories, strains are emerging. While materials and supply shortages may be a significant but temporary challenge, skills and labour scarcities are a more critical problem. And remote working is making absorbing and upskilling staff more difficult. And now, of course, inflation is starting to bite too. So with Rapport3 support, we've lined up 3 terrific success stories from the built environment, businesses that have adapted to turmoil and boomed. What fueled their progress, and can it be sustained? What lessons can we all learn from their lockdown success? And how has technology supported their growth? Now, you'll be hearing a bit about Rapport3 in the discussion today, but we're keen to avoid the discussion getting too technical. So if you'd like to know more about the system and how it supports business growth, hang on at the end of the session for a 10-minute demonstration. In the meantime, let's welcome for the conversation our stellar panel today in alphabetical order. Pat Hayes, the Managing Director at Be First, and Dave Laws, the IT and Estates Director at Hydrock, Caroline Todd, the Head of People and Culture at Civic Engineers. Good morning, all. I'd encourage you to make the most of this panel, viewers, by firing in your questions through the Q&A function, and we'll address as many of those as we can during the course of the conversation. We'd also welcome your observations in the chat. Let's get the discussion started with Pat Hayes. It was our honour, Pat, day before yesterday, to present Be First with the first ever Direct Delivery Team of the Year award for your fantastic affordable homes programme. Tell us a bit about Be First and how the pandemic affected the organisation.
Yeah, we started 5 years ago, coming October. So we've been going 4.5 years now. We're a wholly owned subsidiary company of London Borough of Barking and Dagenham. We're not a housing company, interestingly, and we're a development company. So we do direct development for the council, building homes, we do planning, we do transport planning, we do building control and a range of other regulatory type services. And we also do essentially property development. So we buy sites, sell sites. And we've got 2 real missions. One was to transform the housing market in Barking and Dagenham, and the other one is to deliver the not unconsiderable sum of £10 million a year in income to the council. And I'm happy to say that actually in both of those targets, we're well ahead of plan. To date, I think we've delivered £29 million of surplus back to the council in terms of revenue. And we've built over 2,000, handed over 2,000 homes, and we've got another 4,000 genuinely. This is not sort of council talk of pipeline. This is on site, contracts let, etc., being built. So in our over that sort of 5-year period since startup, we've made an incredible amount of progress, both financially and in terms of actually transforming Barking and parts of Dagenham in terms of the development there. And what we've been able to do is build very rapidly at pace, very high quality publicly owned housing. A lot of it, it's interesting that we've just handed over a block on the Gascoigne estate in Barking, and people have been coming up to us trying to buy it because they think it's private private sale. Somebody else said to me, "Oh, that looks like a Berkeley Homes development. This is council housing, effectively." So, real success. Interestingly, in terms of the question that you pose, over half our time effectively was during COVID. So that we've achieved that despite COVID, despite Brexit, and weathering the current inflation and the economic downturn at the moment. And I think the lessons for me out of that was that we'd already started to create a very modern and dynamic business when COVID hit. We'd got good IT in place. We've got flexible working was part of our culture, so a lot of people were working from home already. We were very much about what you achieve rather than time spent in the office. We'd gone from having 40 staff all came over from the council, of which probably about 20 remain now, to 120 staff, mainly recruited from the private sector. And what we saw during the worst of the COVID epidemic actually was productivity increasing. Because we were making better use of resource, we were able to do that. As you mentioned, construction wasn't, other than a brief period of a few days almost in London, wasn't directly affected by the shutdown. So we were able to continue working. I think one of the other things for us, we had we used for the direct build top tier contractors effectively, and they were able to adapt quickly because again we had a very strong health and safety culture, and so did people we selected to work for us, to working in a COVID safe manner and doing those things that you needed to do to keep your employees healthy and be able to continue to work safely. So I think a lesson there, that health and safety is important. Getting it right is part of being an effective business, and those that coped best with COVID, I think, were those that took health and safety seriously beforehand. It's interesting as well, of course, that with working from home and COVID restrictions, etc., we got to a position where no one was off sick, except in the only sickness we've had over the last couple of years has been during those sort of peaks of COVID infection. Other health issues have virtually gone away, which is very interesting in terms of productivity. And when you come back to the foolish MP from Somerset, who I won't name, going on about a loss of productivity because people aren't coming into the office, it's actually the other way around. Because people are staying healthier, fitter, able to do their what they need to do and still work. And it's actually one of the interesting things we were talking about the other day, saying that if we brought people back to the office, which we may want to do in a phased way for reasons of socialisation and training and developing young employees, we will have to accept a drop in productivity in areas like planning, because during that lockdown period we moved from fairly poor performing planning authority to being the best performing. I think we're only second to Castle Point, and I think Castle Point get many major planning applications. So as a planning authority, we're now turning planning applications around faster than anybody else in the country from relatively a low base and a small staff base, and in a borough where there are lots of big schemes as well as lots of householder applications. So it's worth sort of thinking about that when thinking about the culture of an organisation, how you adapt. So the challenge for us, I think, is where we are now is that we've been lucky that we were building at speed and at considerable volume at a time when money was relatively cheap, interest rates were low, and the housing market was relatively buoyant in terms of demand. I mean, demand in Barking still remains very, very strong because the type of people that we're looking to house are your key workers, for want of a better word. People who have to live in London have to live relatively close to where they work. They aren't people who can move out to the countryside in a mythical cottage in Suffolk or somewhere. So demand for our product remains strong. What will happen in the broader housing industry remains it'll be interesting to see what happens in London. But the challenge that we do face is rapidly increasing build costs.
And we'll come on to that. We'll come on to that later in the session, because that's going to be a crucial part of the conversation. I just wanted to go back, though. A fantastic success story, great business. Did you find that you had problems within the supply chain with other organisations that you're working for not performing to the sort of standards you were setting at the pace you were setting? I mean, how did you find them managing?
I mean, since I think over the last 2 years, definitely, and certainly really, once the effects of Brexit started to hit, we immediately started to get supply chain problems. Basic products, which we've, again, part of our design ethos, we use a lot of brick because it looks better and lasts better and everything like that. The brick supplies have been very difficult. A lot of them are imported. COVID started to affect that as well because of plants being shut down. All sorts of other products. At the moment you can't get electricity meters it's a shortage of electricity meters. I went to a site the other day, and the guys were laying beautiful landscaping, but they were laying stepping stones for kids to play on as part of player, and said, we've had to change the design of those because the ones we were buying were coming from the Ukraine. Obviously, they haven't come from the Ukraine. So there's a real pressure around the time it takes to get things. We've mitigated that to a degree by bulk buying. We used some of our sites that were in progress to store, and we bought a lot of tiles in advance and stored them at one site. We bought other products. We bought a load of trees actually in advance, so they're sitting in a nursery growing, so we can call them off when we need them. So I think it is about having to manage. And accepting that the supply chain is going to be different. For us, as our development part of our business, it's actually been quite helpful because a move away from just in time and stuff coming from all sorts of places very rapidly, and has meant that the supply chain system has become less efficient. There's now much more greater demand for storage space and logistics warehouses, which has pushed the price of commercial land in Barking and Dagenham up from a couple of £1 million an acre to we're selling a site at north of £8 million an acre now, which we bought to do residential development on. So it's a change dynamic there, but it's important that that won't last forever, but it has changed the face of development in London, because now in places like Barking and Dagenham, industrial is worth more than residential actually.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Thanks, Pat. Okay, let's have a look at civic engineers. Caroline, we're switching the focus slightly towards the sort of staff and human resources and cultural aspect of running a growth business, but interested in your thoughts on supply chain and managing clients as well. Tell us a bit about civic engineers and how you entered the pandemic and what effect it had.
Okay, yep. Hello, everyone. So we are a design-led civil, structural and transport engineering consultancy. We have 160 employees. We cover across the UK. We've got studios in Manchester, Glasgow, Leeds and London, and also micro studios in Liverpool and Edinburgh. So our reach is UK-wide. We are a team that are passionate about the built environment, really creating a positive spaces, buildings to enable people to live healthier and happier lives, with a real focus on sort of the climate emergency and how our designs can be climate resilient. So the pandemic.
Yeah.
So pre-March, we were predominantly an organisation that worked in the studios, 9 to 5-ish. We had just over 80 employees across the UK. And sort of within a few days, we all had to work from home. So we had suddenly 80 little studios at home, and obviously that was challenging. Fortunately, our IT team had already started to sort of transition towards using laptops, which again was fantastic. They'd already working towards using Teams. So again, that sort of preparation, we were there, but obviously it was everybody had to work from home immediately, and we, what we did straight away was look at how we communicated. We had sort of crisis management meetings on a weekly basis, which we fondly termed our kind of Viper meetings. Can't remember now what it stands for. And we talked about, government guidance. We talked about our staff, how they were feeling, what we needed to do to support them. How their mental well-being was at the time, and had they got the equipment to do their job. So there was a lot of kind of ferrying equipment to people's houses. We were a small team, so the IT people were, they were in the cars, dropping laptops off, dropping screens off, ordering.
How far was what was the sort of geography of that? Was that all sort of within a single city, or was that nationally? You had IT staff driving across the country to drop laptops off to members of
Yeah.
staff?
Yeah, we did. We had, quite a small, we were a small business. We had a small IT team, and they were driving all over the place, Leeds, Manchester, people in between, because obviously a lot of our team took the opportunity to go back to perhaps parents' houses, or, go and sort of settle somewhere other than a city. So, because obviously that was it didn't really matter, we couldn't be in the studios together. And obviously for our younger members, our grads, our apprentices, they were living in shared houses, sometimes confined to just their own bedrooms, struggling with broadband. We had a lot of our teams have got kids. They had the sort of added pressure of having children at home, homeschooling them, which I remember sort of very early on, we set up a Teams group called sort of Kids at Home to share our tips, support, chat, support each other. We were very understanding and empathetic with people who had difficult were working in really difficult circumstances, and offered that flexibility. It's okay, we understand, if you're working in the evenings rather than during the day because you're homeschooling, that's absolutely fine. And we were really, it's about flexibility. We trust you. Our support teams were there as well to make sure that our technical teams could continue delivering projects, talking to clients.
And you said it's a small team, but this is 80 people that we're talking about that are involved in all of these. And how many was it by the end of the pandemic, after a couple of years?
It had doubled, so we were 160. So
Right.
I think in the first year we took on 20 or 30. I might be 34, and then in the 2021 we took on 54.
So you're managing all of those new processes and systems with all of those new people as well.
Yes.
And you talked about mental well-being and looking after the health of your teams. How do you actually get people to talk about that when there may be someone that's joined the company 2 weeks ago and never met a single other member of staff?
It was our biggest challenge to make sure that we were supporting each person, and we had invested just prior to lockdown in training for mental first aid. So one of our members of the people and culture team was a mental health first aider. And obviously that is about identifying, where people are struggling, pointing them in the direction for support. The people and culture team, comms team, and people managers work really closely together. Constant dialogue about, how are your team members? Have you got any worries? Do we need to do a care call? We did sort of hundreds of calls to people over that period, making them feel that they weren't on their own, making sure that they had got somebody to talk to if they wanted to, and just checking in, just finding out how their day was, and just the challenges, and really understanding that everybody was having their own challenges and nobody was the same.
Yeah, fascinating. I'm sure a lot of that resonates with you at Hydrock, Dave, but on a different scale. I mean, what sort of size of business were you going into the pandemic, and what was the growth curve for you over that period, and what were the challenges, sort of focusing on your role as in IT and estates?
Yeah. So at the start of the pandemic, we were a kind of a 500 person business, 16 offices, and sort of 40-ish million sales turnover. And through the pandemic, so we're now in 19 locations. We've opened three offices in new locations. We're expanding in 4 of our existing locations. Sales turnover is just about 60 million now, and and we are just shy of 750 people. So some significant growth in sort of lots of places around the country. It's all domestic, apart from we have tentatively started to make steps abroad and have a bridgehead in New Zealand, which is one person only at the moment. But yeah, we're so lots of growth, and certainly some of the things that Caroline and Pat have talked about in terms of suppliers. Obviously, the chip shortage was a major factor for us in terms of trying to go to a remote business and growth at those sorts of levels. So yeah, it certainly resonated what Pat was saying, although obviously he's talking about construction supplies. But yeah, stocking was something that we hadn't done before, and you have to look at different alternatives. So you started to see hub monitors as a simple idea of a docking station built into a hub, and we started to bring that into our portfolio. You end up using lots of suppliers rather than your usual suppliers, so you have to kind of try and source things where you can, and partnering was really important. So kind of some recognition that the people you're using as suppliers are going through the same sorts of things as you. So we have very, very kind of long-term relationships with our suppliers, certainly on the IT and telecoms side. So we've been with our IT support company for 20-25 years, and if you've got to that sort of partnering relationship, you can in the early days we'd agreed sort of various sort of terms in terms of in payment terms and supply terms, and we'd agreed rent suspensions and things like that. But when it became apparent that we weren't going to be needing that, we kind of unwound those things pretty quickly to reflect to help them in their position as well. So that kind of partnering is really quite important. So yeah, those are certainly things.
I don't imagine you were driving all over the country in your car dropping off laptops either. I mean, but what was the sort of IT status of the business as you went into March 20th, 2020?
So as we went in, we were kind of transitioning and making more remote working possible. So we switched to Office 365 already, and I'd say about a third of the business was using Teams to some extent, and we beefed up our ability to work remotely from the office network already. So day one, sending people home with their computer under their arm and saying, right, can you work from home, please, was it wasn't the showstopper that it would have been the previous 18 months before that. So we were concentrating around building capacity and building resilience in those early stages. So again, with the partners within the first 3 months, we were able to install additional firewalls so that we didn't have a single point failure in terms of and sort of load sharing. So it just improved that resilience and that and the ability to, if one thing were to go down, then you have options and so that you can keep the business going. We'd have been very successful if we'd have set up a courier company at the same time, but we didn't. That's not what we would have done best. So we didn't, and but we getting kit out to people in time for their new start or in replacement equipment, etc. That's kind of logistical change that we've had to soak up and make a plan around, and that's particularly around the new starters. Obviously, we've recruited sort of getting on for 250 people in the period net growth. Obviously, there's the actual number of people joining is more than that because of a bit of voluntary levers. So we had to re-engineer that process so that things were arriving on time in the right location, everything preloaded, worked, a plug and play sort of scenario. So yeah, that was a big change from a kind of a just-in-time process that we had previously. Yeah.
Great stuff. Thanks, Dave. I don't know if it says something about the cultural health of the country, maybe about the environmental health as well, that so many young people who used to work in bars and pubs while they were waiting for acting gigs or musical gigs or whatever coming up are now couriers and jumped straight into vans and started delivering laptops around the country for us all.
I mean, that cultural piece you mentioned, and Caroline mentioned it as well, is kind of been absolutely key in terms of how do you maintain the culture of your business and your teamwork when people are sat in multiple locations.
Well, we're gonna go straight onto that. I'm just gonna test the audience though and just see if they're on the same wavelength. Let's find out. I mean, we've heard about 3 fantastically growing businesses. We've got some common threads around. You were already relatively prepared in terms of IT. You were already working flexibly to an extent, and you were already growing. You were on a growth path, all of you, when the pandemic hit. I think those are all sort of crucial components, ingredients of your success. Let's see how many of the audience are in similar businesses traveling in a similar direction. And while we ask them that, Caroline, let's talk a bit about how you managed that growth. You said that you've grown from 80 staff at the beginning of the pandemic. How do you manage growth during the pandemic?
Yeah, it was a challenge because obviously we were recruiting, remotely. We were interviewing. It was all remote. All of these new joiners had never physically been into our studios across the country. So we really had to really showcase our culture and, give them a sense of belonging, because obviously there was nervousness about moving during that time, because people just didn't know what was going to happen. So we really focused on creating an online community, continuing to do all of the things that we had previously done in person, but just remotely. So we did things like we sent out seed bombs, we sent out cookies, we sent out Uber food vouchers and postcards and tea bags. And this was all about, we're all in this together. We're thinking about you. It's nice to receive something physical in the post. And it was just about, showing that we cared about people. And, whether you've been within the company for, a number of years or you're a new starter, you're part of, one team. We are, one Civic Engineers. And that was really important. We did lots of things that were sort of online to keep people's spirits up. We did quizzes, we did, activity challenges that we shared, and it was all about let's share our experiences being at home. We did flower, for Mental Health Week, we did flower shows. So again, it was people could go outside and enjoy that. So let's talk about it. Let's share about it. So we had some real fun around that. And actually, the fact that we were all online, I think. It brought us together. It broke down sort of any silos, because you've got 80 plus places that people are working in, some abroad, etc. And it felt very collaborative, and people, like it's already been mentioned, we didn't see a drop in performance. Actually, through our workbus surveys, people were saying we actually feel really trusted, and that's we've taken that, and that was really, really positive.
But you doubled the staff numbers in that period.
Yeah.
How do you communicate all of that to the kind of outside world that doesn't come to see your office? You can't have potential recruits coming to see you physically. So how are you attracting so many staff?
It's through sort of social media. Our client integration team, comms team, we've worked really closely with them, all the way through, and continue to do so. It's about telling our story, talking about our values and our purpose and our people, and really using our teams, our people across the practice to really, broadcast that, shout about it on their social media. I mean, we obviously use our website, our all our different channels, but it is about, this is what it's like to be at Civic Engineers. You don't physically need to be in a studio, but this is who we are. This is how we do things. This is what we're about. And I think it's so important to have a really clear purpose as a business, and a very, very clear set of values that you all, buy into. And that's what attracts people. And it's that clarity.
Fantastic. Dave, does any of that resonate with you at Hydrock? That kind of the importance of communicating the culture of the business?
Yeah, absolutely. And exactly like Caroline was saying, you have to come up with really kind of imaginative ways to try and develop that culture, and having to be that imaginative, it kind of plays into kind of back to normal life in terms of, you don't have to stop with the creativity. You can still do these things, and where teams are kind of around the country, you can still use those techniques, and you don't have to all congregate sort of every time you want to have a team get together. You can now, you might have had a team get together once or twice a year previously because it was always face to face. Now actually you can do it more times, and because you can combine it with some of the other things. So yeah, similarly we were having online wine tasting, online cocktail making, bake-offs. We had a choir, and we had a database of people that lived near each other, so you could go and do your walk that you were allowed to do. You could hook up with somebody that sort of lived locally to you from the company, and if you wanted to. So yeah, lots of things, and very similar to what Caroline's been saying. Yeah,
Caroline, you wanted to come in?
We even did virtual yoga.
Did you hire in an instructor, or have you got one in the business?
In our London studio, we have a very talented yoga engineer. But we introduced sort of stretching classes, because obviously people were sat for a long time sort of at the computers at their home. So we really wanted to kind of spice it up, make it encourage sort of activity.
So I want to go on to ask how much of this is continuing. So Caroline, how much of that are you still doing? The kind of the yoga classes, the bake-offs, the wine tastings, and so on, the flower shows in your case?
Well, we have just done our flower show for this year, so it continues, and it was in line with Mental Health Awareness Week. So everybody shared their photos. The judges have now picked their winners, and we've shared it across, so it's fun, and we will continue to do that.
It's still virtual though.
It is with the flower show, so people send in their images. Yoga's taking place in studios in London, and we just done our 10k run as a team in Manchester, so that was on Sunday. So yeah, it's ongoing.
Is that the same for you, Dave, that these things are ongoing and still largely virtual, or you're going back into the office in terms of those sorts of activities, and you retained that cultural improvement?
Yeah, I'd say that it is being retained. I would probably say there's with kind of coming out of lockdown, there's been a rush to get loads of face-to-face things and meet up as teams and have away days and things like that, because we haven't been able to do it for so long. So kind of we're going through a phase where kind of we're getting together face-to-face. We've just announced the Hydrock Challenge Day, where the whole company gets together for a team event. We have that. We missed 2020. We did manage to do one in 21, and we're doing that again this year. So yeah, very much. But I think I think that will kind of level out, and you'll see a bit more of a balance. So it won't all be face to face, but it won't all be online. And you're seeing it as well in the sort of the meetings, whereas typically every meeting would have been face to face, and now I'd say that that's something that has stayed, in that a large proportion of meetings, client interaction, design interactions are taking place.
And how is your IT infrastructure supporting that? Because now you've got two business models in effect. How much adaptation have you had to do?
So we're in the process again. I mean, just not because it wasn't up to the task, but we're in the process of implementing our network connectivity, and which is going to supply, we're supplying bigger connectivity to all the locations, but we're doing that on the basis that connectivity is now cheaper than it used to be. So for the same sort of cost as we were paying before, you can have faster connections, which will again allow for the growth that continuing to see, and so it's that resilience. So I mentioned previously, it's building in that resilience and the ability to be able to work in multiple different ways.
Would you describe that as like significant ongoing IT investment, or?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a significant investment. We could have maintained the sort of things at the same level, and actually we probably would have reduced our costs. But that, knowing that we've got kind of thick end of 100 vacancies that we're trying to fill at the moment, we need to build that resilience into the infrastructure.
It's interesting because the audience, there's only 8% of the audience are feeling that significant IT investment is needed, and 70% almost I think there's some investment, but not significant.
Yeah, I mean, if we were to
almost a quarter, none at all.
Yeah, if we were to compare it to during the pandemic, so take for instance, kind of arming people to be more mobile in the way they work. So we had 150 people that had desktops. We needed to set up sort of 500 hot desks in the offices for people to be able to do hybrid working. So compared to that level of investment, not what we're talking about now is not to the same level, but it's recognizing that these things take so long to implement that you have to plan before you actually need them.
Yeah. Great stuff. Caroline, I know you want to come in again, but Pat's been waiting really patiently, so I'll come back to you in a sec. Pat, so we've got threads around sort of culture and keeping staff engaged all the way through that kind of lockdown period. But then, how do those things emerge and evolve as we go back to working in the office? The kind of need for infrastructure, IT infrastructure and so on to support all of that, and the general sense of whether things have really significantly changed now, or whether the culture and the business model that you set up during lockdown, whether that is going to endure.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's happened is that a trend that was already occurring was very rapidly, and it's the same for the retail sector actually, was very rapidly accelerated. And as has just been said, I don't think we're going to go back to the days of doing everything in person, because it's fairly obvious that with the right IT, and I think the IT platform is now stable, things like we're doing today, that will become standard because the IT works. It will incrementally improve, no doubt, but that so much that was done in person won't be done in person because there's much more efficient and easier done online. I think I work a lot harder in terms of hours spent at the computer, lack of downtime now, but I'm not wasting time traveling around London. And from an environmental point of view, I think the days of a lot of business travel is probably gone. It's costly, it's environmentally not particularly friendly, and and we're also finding we're doing things we wouldn't have done before. Because I'm now talking to people in Manchester. It wouldn't have been worth me going on the train up to Manchester, but it's perfectly worthwhile having I was doing some work for the NHS during lockdown actually, which I wouldn't have done if I had to go up to Manchester and do it for them. But we just did it did it online. So there are huge opportunities. I think the challenge now is working out, what are the things that you need to do in person, and what are the things that are best done online. And the challenge, the technological challenge, is still around the sort of hybrid meeting where half the people are there and half the people are online. That still doesn't quite work, and we're still investing in some new kit to try and do that better, because gone back to having board meetings in person, but then somebody has to isolate or whatever, or someone's away and then they're dialing in, and that is, I think, a technical challenge. I think the other interesting, slightly perverse thing is that I think people quite like going in the office, but they don't like the travelling involved, and it's the downtime around and travelling and the unpleasantness and the cost of the nature of Britain with its underfunded infrastructure and everything else. So you find that people go in the office, and they're the people who want to be in the office with lots of other people. But of course, there aren't lots of other people in the office, because the bulk of people don't want to go into the office. So how do you deal with the ultra extrovert who wants to be in the office because they want to meet loads of people, who are then left essentially on their own in the office, because the other people are all quite happy working from home, because it works so much better for work-life balance. And I think there's also, a big equalities issue here, actually. And again, that MP from North Somerset, of course, won't recognise or like this, but it appears that working from home, definitely is better and favours women. So we want to carry on doing that. So we're not, it's also much more popular with people from ethnic minority background as well. And whether that's due to the unpleasant nature of the interactions they have to put up with in day-to-day life on the street and everything else, or at work indeed, I think there's some interesting issues around that. It's a much more accountable, and it is sort of noticeable that some of the types that you see saying, "Oh, my staff must come back to the office," and I think, I bet you're the sort of nasty pinstripe suit lecturer who makes female staff life misery in your workplace. So so I do think there are some really, really interesting dimensions there, and in terms of organisational culture, I think the thing that we're noticing is that during the pandemic, the good managers were actually having more contact with their staff than previously. Possibly some of the others needed to be nudged a little bit more. The better managers, who've always been better at staff management, seem to be the ones who are much better at managing staff remotely and don't need to get their staff back in. Say, I must have all my staff back in so I can manage them properly. And I think that for us has been sort of interesting in terms of identifying the managers who probably need a bit more development work, because they're clearly struggling slightly. And it's a bit like, personnel practice, health and safety. It always exposes those people who aren't probably quite as good. So I think there's a lesson to be learned there. There are some things which are, I had to sack someone remotely during COVID, which isn't a pleasant experience, and that is something which is much better done face to face, in a room rather than over a screen. But some interesting.
It's interesting that as well, because for a bad manager, the temptation to do it online is huge, isn't it? Because you press the button and it's over, right? Whereas in person, there's always that kind of nasty bit at the end where you're still with the person that you're giving bad news to. So I think what you say about good managers managing better during COVID, that plays into companies that were already growing carried on growing, and companies that were already flexibly working were able to adapt more quickly. Caroline, how does all that resonate at Civic? And there's a particular thing Pat mentioned there about younger and more extrovert and creative people. I was talking to a friend recently whose son worked in the video game, and he produces corporate videos. So he's a very creative guy doing a fairly kind of corporate and restrictive job, but loved it. West End of London offices, meeting young creative people every day, going out and experiencing that kind of urban fabric around West London. Now he's going into an office that is 3/4 empty. The only people who are there are pretty miserable, and he's doing a really sort of corporate job that he doesn't actually enjoy. He's just left with the work. How do you keep those buzzing, creative, exciting people that are at Civic? How do you keep them entertained? Engaged, maybe better word.
Oh, entertained as well. That's fine. I think investing in the studios. So people want to go into their offices. We call them studios, because they are places where people can collaborate, learn. Have those informal chats, but you've got to create the right environment that they want to go in. we've gone to, we knew very, very sort of early on, based on the feedback that we had from our staff, that, it was never going to go back to a 9 to 5. And, we wanted to take sort of all the positives and learnings from, our lockdown experience, and create a model which we call our better normal, that actually worked for everyone. So, we have gone to a 50-50 hybrid model. So we encourage people to be in the studio 50% of the time. So 3 days out of 5, we make sure that they're team days. So, they're together, they're talking, they're learning, the sort of younger engineers have got that support from some of the managers, from their people that have got more experience. And that is absolutely critical. I think you can't just have sort of younger, less experienced people in the studios and not have that that senior the senior support. It doesn't work. So it's been. We are working through it. We're tweaking things. If we feel that certain people need to be in the studio more for their learning, or a particular time, or a particular, that what they're working on, then that they come in. It's about that kind of give and take, and constantly talking to them, whether it be in person, on Teams, and really having that relationship, or facilitating that relationship with sort of encouraging the line manager, which has the biggest impact. So like Pat says, we've invested in development for our people managers, because they've got to, their skill set has had to evolve to cover sort of managing people online, not just when you sat next to them, which obviously sat next to someone is much easier. You've got to really fine tune your management and your leadership skills to ensure that everybody feels that included. And I totally agree with Pat when he's talking about how it's impacted, having that flexibility, impacts on certain sections of society. And that is, that we've got to sort of recognize that and hang on to that, because allowing people to be at home, when the kids come in, give them their tea, or go and collect their kids, or go to the sports day, or take them to for a doctor's meeting, all of that previously is, for families, that's really stressful, because you're trying to do a job, you need to go and collect your child. It's given people permission, and it ultimately it's about trust, and having that, we trust you, they trust us, and it's that empathy.
It's great stuff. I can imagine Jacob Rees-Mogg shaking in his Chelsea boots at the thought that people are actually spending time with their kids and families when they could be working. But yeah, really important stuff, and huge themes to unpack there. We've got a webinar coming up on mental health in the construction industry, and I find it fascinating that there are. The number of suicides in the construction industry outweighs all other industries by huge factors, and these are the people who aren't benefiting from flexible working, from working at home, and so on. They tend to be less. Those systems tend to be less available to them, and I wonder if there's a connection there. That's a conversation for another time, June the 30th. But Caroline, you've got some images you can share with us about how you've made the offices kind of as exciting and attractive as you can to make sure that people do come back, because that's a big issue, isn't it? Just trying to make it interesting for people, to tempt them away from their families.
Yeah, absolutely. So these are images of our Manchester studio. We've been going through sort of a complete refit. Still some work to do. We've got showers going in downstairs, but you can see, we've changed the lighting, we've changed the layout, we've put in a lovely kitchen. We've got really great equipment within the kitchen. We've invested, and there's places to relax. There is going to be we've got a special bike room, storage area that's just being finished off at the moment, but areas to go and sit and have your lunch. So it's really creating that sort of space that people want to spend time and talk to each other. And you can see there's a breakfast bar there. There's loads of fruit, which is we have sort of on a daily basis. It's really nice to move away from your desk, have a sit, have a chat. It can be work related, it can be personal. It's having that space. And yeah, we've got another image.
Oh yeah, keep going.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us what sort of occupancy levels that you're getting. I mean, how many of your staff are coming back now?
Well, all of them are in the studios 2 or 3 days a week, which is brilliant. And you can see sort of teams in together, all sitting together. But there is that flexibility. There's the flexibility when you arrive at work, when you leave work. It is about people know sort of what they have to deliver. So it's trusting them to do that. This image is our new Glasgow studio on Virginia Street, which they totally moved. So and designed it. It's with a real, as you can see, it's got a flair. It's got a fantastic little kitchen area. They invested in sort of showers, lockers, great meeting space, fantastic mural sort of on the wall. So it's been
it's really lovely stuff. So we've got this.
And London,
even better. London have got a bike wall.
Forgotten. London have a bike wall. So they've got lockers. They've got fantastic kitchens on different levels. They've got comfy seating. Brilliant sort of storage. There's a real mix in the kind of the space. So it suits for people that need some to be in a quiet area, people that want to collaborate. It's about creating spaces that suit your whole team, not just designing for one set of people. And
Caroline, thank you very much.
Constantly evolving. So.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. Now, Dave, I asked Caroline to go before you there because I knew she'd be a tough act to follow. But I also knew, inkling from our conversation before, that you had the one thing that could top all of that, which is a surfing lake for employees. Tell us a bit about that, but also tell us about the systems that you're putting in place that are enabling you to manage this kind of hybrid way of working.
Just the surfing lake, it obviously isn't a staff facility. It's a facility near the office, but it's available for staff in one of the Bristol offices. The sorts of things we've invested in a desk booking app. Quite simple. So on a desktop or on a mobile app, and it's got floor plans of all our offices, and we can make available desks for people to book by teams, and whatever. So we implemented that quite early on as part of the return to work, recognizing that there was going to need to be this flexibility, so people can book a desk wherever they want to in the country, whatever they need, whatever suits their needs, and that's gone down really well. I think again, picking up on this, Caroline talked about the layout, and absolutely echo that you need to create an environment that people want to come back to, so that caters for their needs socially from a work perspective, and recognizing that some people might come in on a hot day because it's cooler or than it is in their house, or that they've got a load of people in their house and they want some quiet space. So it has to be everything to everyone, and so it's the one desk to one person sort of model is gone, certainly as far as we're concerned, and it's about some desks, it's about some informal, it's about some formal meeting rooms, it's about some quiet areas, and people can kind of come in for a few hours. Maybe they got a meeting in a different part of town, and they want somewhere to touch down before they go off to another meeting. It's having that. It's been able to have flexibility, and I also think it's about location as well, that attraction, so of getting people in. So yeah, it's the offices that have the better return to work rate are the ones that are in the cities where things are going on. You get together as a team, and then you might go out for a drink after work, or you go get coffee at lunchtime and a sandwich, and so it's the actual knowing something's going on around the offices in the locality is kind of as important as well as what you're doing inside the office.
Is there a bit of management needed there? Because 100% of our audience expects hybrid working conditions to continue. So this flexible working situation will continue. But I mean, there are some unusual requests, aren't there, that people make? There is a sense of entitlement that, I can ask for anything now. You had employees that were asking for beds in the office. Is that a step too far?
We think so. Yeah, I mean, you see the flashes of kind of what some of the Google headquarters looks like, and you've got people working 24 hours, not working 24 hours a day, but the place has got people in it 24 hours a day, that you kind of, when the idea hits you, you kind of start working type environment. And whilst we are a design engineering, design sustainability consultancy, it's a slightly different environment. It's a style of environment, and I'd be surprised if we started seeing people turning up in the middle of the night to make to start doing some engineering work.
Pat, are you getting unusual requests for particular office fit outs or furniture? How much have you sort of adapted the working environment? And we've got, actually, one of the viewers has pointed out that the volume now from Teams calls, because people talk a bit louder when they're on a conference call, is something that's quite hard to address in office environments. How are you managing all this?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We're going to be moving offices actually over the summer, because the lease on our current one is up, and actually there was a more interesting space close by, and part of the reason for moving is we might move to a nicer space which might be a little bit more attractive, and it's a sort of shared workspace with lots of sort of startup businesses and things like that, but might be more interesting for the staff to be based there. But definitely one of the things we've been thinking about, and if you hadn't raised this, was going to mention this, that last time I was in our office, there weren't many people in the office, but they were all on a Teams call, so that the nature of they'd gone in there possibly to meet other people, to do other things, but then we're on Teams calls to third parties, to clients, contractors, etc. So in the new office design, I think we're going to go for the communal space where people can work at large tables, but also more booths of a type where people can be whilst they're on a Teams call, recognizing people will be in the office, but quite possibly talking to someone, another part of the country, or indeed, or just over the road actually, but on a Teams meeting. So I think that's a real change. In terms of strange requests, I mean, I think we did start to get people at one point, I mean, this has all gone away now. We just said no, wanting us to pay for their home internet, their home bills and things like that. And it was very much, no, this is a matter of trust. It's a bit of quid pro quo here, just as I don't really mind how many hours you do, as long as you do the job. On the other hand, we're not going to pay your electricity bill, because you're at home, and et cetera, et cetera. So common sense prevails. It's always it's only one or two people who ever do that. One of the things I will have to do probably is try and recover some of the kit that was taken away at the start of the pandemic. People helping themselves to chairs and laptops and computers and stuff like that, because ultimately there's going to be some audit of what we had and what we haven't got, particularly as we're council owned. So I will have to try and probably recover some kit that was liberated for a period of time at the start of the events. But I think it's now about what does that modern office space look like that is good for people who are possibly just dropping in. We did look actually when around our lease discussion of, do we have no office? Do we actually just use, which we had been using during the pandemic, contractor space? Obviously we've got a lot of site offices with contractors, so we had been using meeting rooms on site offices, extra space at site offices, other space the council has in depots and other council offices. So we could effectively have moved to a no office environment where everyone was dropping into different points, none of which we owned or leased. We took the view, actually, for culture and other reasons, we did actually want a base, that the majority of people could go to some of the time. But again, I think there are some organisations may well decide, well, no, we won't have a fixed office address, nor we'll have a number of spaces which we use. And we certainly have looked at, well, do we do some of these sort of meetings rather than dragging everyone out to Barking, do a Teams meeting not a Teams meeting, in central London, for example. Get some, borrow some space off a partner, a contractor or whatever. And we did use that. We have had, various things in, at suppliers' offices, rather than dragging everyone to our current office for an event or thing. So I think, this is all about, I think, being flexible and really thinking about, the how work should operate, because. And I think it's really interesting because in many ways, it's the same with education, actually, we still live in a very Fordian sort of world, in terms of, we moved from everyone working at home in the craft industry, pre-industrial revolution, through the industrial revolution to this very mechanized where everyone's there for the sound of the bell and you log on and log on, clock on and clock off, and the bell rings and that your day is governed in that very Fordist process manager. And we're moving now back to a much more, home working craft based thing where it's actually more about the output that you produce rather than the time you spend or the and I think one of the reasons why our sickness level has gone down actually is because now people can nip out and go to the dentist or take the kids to the doctor or whatever. So before they've had to take a whole day off sick because they didn't want to take leave. Now with a much more flexible work, you just do it and make the work time up afterwards. Other people are working in the evenings far more because they can and they want to, which is fine with me within constraints. And I think we do have to be careful that we don't get into this thing, as somebody said to me, it's not working from home, it's living at work. And I think there is you have to be careful about that. Yeah, you have to make sure
you're not forcing, of the same coin.
You're not forcing people to work. And I do this, and I know it's wrong, but I tend to work 7 days a week because I'm always looking at emails and things like that. I'll be out on my bike and my phone will ping, and I'll look at it and start replying to it. That's just stupid. One, it's dangerous, but two, you should have some downtime.
Don't try this at home.
So I think there's a balance there in terms of giving people that freedom without forcing them to essentially, and the French have brought in legislation around this, for example, so I do think we have to think about that. But otherwise, it's a real opportunity for people. And as Caroline was saying, it's a lot of think about being a trusting employer, and people then respond to that, So it's some of the other historic things as well, flexi time isn't relevant anymore. Councils traditionally, one of the bonuses of work for council, you had flexi time. It's always this marvelous. When I was a young man back in the Romans were in charge, it was a marvelous thing. You got flexi time because you work for the council. Now, of course, it's totally a ridiculous anachronistic concept, but people are still trying to bank up flexi time. So you just have to be sensible. So there are all sorts of subtle little changes. And the last thing to conclude, I'd say, is that actually for us, recruitment and retention is always difficult because we can't pay what the private sector pays necessarily, but I think this flexible working and this liberal attitude will give us a cutting edge. And people who we are recruiting are moving to us because they don't want to have to trek back into West End office and put a suit on and and all that sort of stuff. So it does give us that little bit of an edge that we are. You can come in the office and work if your house isn't very nice, but if you're happy working at home and it works for the function you're doing, we're happy with it. So it gives us a little bit of a recruitment and retention edge against the more traditional property sector business, certainly.
And I think that flexibility, that sort of flexibility, is really the sort of theme that's run throughout the conversation today, which we have to draw to a close now. And we've got through that entire discussion without mentioning Rapport3, but I know that in two of your cases, Dave and Caroline, you're both using that system and the flexibility of that system. There you go, my segue, to support all of the measures that you've been describing and manage the growth curve of the businesses through the last couple of years. So we managed to do an hour's conversation without a plug, and I got one in at the end. I hope the viewers are grateful for that. But viewers, grateful or not, please join me in thanking our brilliant panel for sparing their valuable time to share their knowledge and experience today. Thank you to Pat Hayes from Be First, and thank you to Dave Laws from Hydrock, and thank you to Caroline Caroline Todd from Civic Engineers. Thank you to Rapport3 and Cubic Interactive for instigating and supporting the session. And if you stay on the call for about 10 minutes, you'll get to see the system in action, viewers. But before that, there's just time to thank you as well for tuning in and gracing us with your attention. The next thing on our agenda, as I mentioned earlier, is improving mental health in the construction industry with the London Construction Programme and guests. And we're going to welcome the new leader of Hounslow Council, Councillor Shantanu Rajawat, in our first one-to-one interview following the local elections, and that's on June the 14th. So you can register for both of those in the chat right now. But in the meantime, from our fabulous panel, from Rapport3 and from me and from everyone at 3Fox, good afternoon. Charles Devoyle at Rapport3. Anyone holding on, we're going to invite you to join the panel and join Charles for a 10-minute demo of the system that's kept several of these businesses afloat and growing through the last couple of years. Charles, over to you.
Thank you very much, Toby. I just wanted to keep this very brief as a good first flavour for Rapport3. But I just wanted to thank Toby and Toby's team for getting our clients together, Hydrock and Civic, to share their experiences, and obviously inviting Pat to come in and make some great points about the topic. And I was just going to share my screen, if I may. So just before showing everyone Rapport3, hopefully you can all see what a cutting edge wave garden looks like. So obviously really looking forward to dropping in and visiting Dave very soon and seeing the wave garden.
Yeah,
That must be feasible at Barking Riverside.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, we've had various ideas for a swimming pool and everything. Barking Riverside, the Port of London Authority got very sniffy about it there.
Surprise, surprise. Yeah.
That's good. Well, I'll just show a few slides, Toby, if you're seeing that okay. And
Good, Charles.
just wanted to introduce myself and my role within Rapport3. I'm one of the associate directors here, and my team are responsible for the sales and marketing side. But I wanted to introduce you to the product and also the whole team that are involved in helping and supporting our clients. So what we feel is really unique to us, because there's obviously lots of great software out there, is that we're 100% focused to construction professionals. So really pleased to see how well both Hydrock and Civic Engineering are doing and are driving forward and using Rapport3. But working in practice is very much in our DNA. Our three founders of the business met while they were working at Broadway Malyon, and prior to that, both Duncan and Blake worked at the old Whitby Bird before it evolved into to Ramble. So they wanted to take those experiences and create a product specifically for construction professional services. Rapport3 was created, and then we're very proud to have over 200 clients using Rapport3, predominantly in UK and Ireland, but some of our clients are doing fantastic work internationally, so we are supporting Rapport3 across the globe. And really this is possible because of the unique nature of how Rapport3 was created and it's supported. So all you'll need, as I'll show you shortly, is a browser, the browser of your choice. You can connect in and see all the important information about your projects, your staff, and how the practice is getting on. But because we're out and about more, is that we've got the mobile phone experience, and also it's working there in the background when you're using Outlook as well. Importantly, so that we can get a really strong return on investment for our clients, quick adoption is built into the product. to help get you organised, get your important information about your practice and your project over into Rapport3, and then also that ability to work with you, help you in the process, and enable you to get the right reports that's going to help you make better, quicker decisions going forward. And Rapport3 isn't an island, so we understand that our clients have got great systems already in place, so we've got the ability to integrate with those, and that we're very well noted for our integration with both account systems and the Microsoft products like Office 365. So we're really proud of the customer stories which are on our website, and some great recent success stories about how our customers are growing and surviving the challenges of the last 2 years. And particularly important that it's not just about the business improvements, it's about the personal stories behind it, getting all staff engaged, all staff benefiting from that, so that we're capturing information earlier than ever before that's helping all levels within the business make better decisions. So final slide before I switch over and show Rapport3 running live is that we're very much going to be focused on the core element of Rapport3, which is the core job costing module. But it's important that we've got these robust integrations that we can connect into your favorite accounts packages and document management systems, email systems. But also you've got the ability to add on a really good contact and marketing module within our CRM side, the ability to add on great HR functions that's going to help on recruiting staff, managing CPD, developing skills within the organization. And one of my favorites, because I couldn't cope a normal day without the ability of being able to manage and find those project emails that are going in and coming out of our organization and our clients' organizations all the time. So obviously I want to try and keep within the short period of time, and just wanted to flip over and just show Rapport3 working in action. So if everyone can still see the screen, just wanted to show a typical view of a director connecting in the morning. I have a fictitious persona called John, and as John connects in, we've got the Rapport3 logo and color schemes going on here, but you've got the ability to choose the color scheme that suits your brand, suits your company, and you get to choose based on your role within the business is what information you want to see when you log into the system. So John wants to see all the project information about his key client, Airbus. Just gives him the ability to open and expand any of these dialog boxes and enable him to have a quick flick through, and a simple color coding system. Green's good because it's showing which elements of projects are currently in profit, and what their expected projected final profit position is going to be, but it's marking any potential problem areas. So there's a couple of projects where payments are late and marked in red, but with that dynamic integration with your account system, as soon as the client pays, then it will automatically update this and turn green. So you get good news straight away. And at any time on all of these, we can just select a graphical view, and it's a good way of being able to see a graphical illustration of the type of billing that's been set up for this particular project, how early on we had we've got this cumulative monthly billing that's following the fee plan, but as costs get associated to the project are coming in from both timesheets and expenses, then you're getting a very good indication on what the costs are, and then hopefully a nice profit margin that's being shown in terms of the gap as it goes through. And then just as I look at some of the other dashboards, we've got some links into the Microsoft Power BI business intelligence tools. We've got the ability to have a look at the financial performance across either the whole business, or in this case, just the London office of our fictitious practice, and it's showing us what's going to be happening in the next 6 months. So all the planned work are just indicated here in light blue, and any speculative work is indicated here in orange. So it's showing that we really do need to pull our finger out and close down this speculative work that's in May. Otherwise, we need to change the dates and roll that over into June. And obviously, we just need to be mindful, even though we've got a great amount of work coming in June, it's possibly going to create some resourcing challenges within the business. But also really good to see what's been happening over the last 6 months. Again, green is good. It's invoices that have been paid, and anything outstanding here is highlighted in red. But we can just open up that and see which projects and which bills are still outstanding. So a really quick way to interact with the system. And as a manager, I can quickly go in and check any timesheets or expenses or leave booking that's outstanding. But also we could do some simple financial approvals from this interface here as well, such as approving sales invoices and purchase orders as they come through. And even from the home screen, we can have a quick view in terms of the availability of the staff across the different branches. So just checking that we've got enough availability to be doing this upcoming work. Hopefully that's giving you all a good taster of what can be done. There are lots of other areas that we can do, maybe a more sort of interactive run through for yourself and your teams, so that we can sort of relate it to the big challenges that are facing you, because be really keen to also go into the project area and the Heathrow, the fictitious Heathrow project we were talking about earlier, and just showing some of the images and the metrics that's available in the project area, and the ability to then start looking at the tools that can help you generate quotes and putting some early indications in place on the sort of resources that you're going to be needing for these projects, but also being able to configure the system to prompt your staff to be following best practice in your any QA processes that you're running through on those particular projects. So if that's okay in time in terms of giving people an initial overview, Toby, I was just going to flick back to the final slide, just to let people know that you can request a demo at any time through our website, or you can reach out to myself and my team, and we can get something booked in.
Fantastic, Charlie.
But more than happy to cover any more detail if people request, because I've left a few more minutes at the end of this presentation if need be.
That's great. Well, if anyone wants to contact you, I'll drop a note into the chat, or there are Charles' contact details there separately. Charlie, I just want to applaud your ambition. I mean, your assumption that we've got through Heathrow terminals 5, 6, and 7 to get to Terminal 8. It strikes me by the time we get there, all of this is going to be implanted in our brains anyway, isn't it? This is the far-flung future.
And that great point that Pat was making is that our business is one that's been able to just reduce the amount of traveling and flying and driving and carbon that we've just been burning before lockdown, and we've really been able to embrace that remote working and really make a difference for how much. So I'm confident now that we're not going to get to Heathrow Terminal 8, which I think is a pretty good thing.
Well, it's that level of ambition that supported Hydrock and civic engineers through that enormous expansion program. So applaud you and your ability to help those companies grow. Charlie, thanks very much for taking the time to demo. Thanks, Pat, for staying on. Thanks, viewers, for staying on. Hope we've enthused you a bit and given you a taste for Rapport3, and that you'll be on the phones to Charlie to pick up your consultancy straight away. But in the meantime, thanks very much indeed for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next session.